Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning in Calgary, Alberta, Wednesday morning, January 26th. And this is one child abuse survivor to another. Had a little bit of trouble getting into my switchboard here this morning, but glad to be here. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in and everybody who's been listening to my shows. Yesterday's show was pretty graphic, and this today's show will be pretty graphic as well. Talk about child physical abuse and how it affects children and how it affected me. And so it is a graphic topic, you know. It's a very sensitive topic, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about. So if you find that the show might, make you uncomfortable or just really bother you, you have to listen at your own discretion to all of my shows, right? I'm talking about abuse, and abuse is a sensitive subject, right? So, please listen at your discretion and realize, that it is a very sensitive topic. And talking about child physical abuse, I'm talking about my story and really going into, the details. So it is disturbing, and a lot of people may find it disturbing, especially survivors who are not very far along in their healing journey. Stuff like this, a type of information like this on the web can be, or on TV, or wherever, movies and what you're watching, what you're listening to, so that, you're not safe enough to listen to something like this. You might self-injure, you might hurt somebody else. You have to listen at your own discretion and turn the show off, right? Only listen to the show if you're feeling safe, comfortable, and not hurt yourself or else. Right? So, well, I'm just putting up the chat room here now, and I'm not a listen to and another I really wanted to because the voice we have speaking against this stuff and talking about the sounding child abuse, the better, because it's always been this time being, so many, forever get busted or doing family, right? So that's why it's silenced and anyone because it could ruin their lunch, in their day, right? Have to listen to something like this, and who have survived child abuse, our day was ruined a long time ago. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me now. I had to completely go out and reboot and log out and completely go out. So that's horrible. Sorry about that. We lost about 10 minutes of the show. So I guess I'll just continue to talk even after it's not streaming. If you want to go back and catch some of the archive, I'll do the half-hour show. But thanks for being here, everybody. I appreciate it. And like I was saying, I'm not a counselor or therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own shows. And so you have to listen at your own discretion. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my show. And the reason being is that, I believe in keeping children safe at all times. And that and there's a lot of adult content on my shows. So if you're a young person under the age of 18, just have someone okay it that you can listen to my show. And, keep yourself safe online, right? It's very important to do that. You need to know how to keep yourself online, especially when there's a chat room, right? So we're going to get right into this topic. And yesterday this is pretty graphic, and that's why I wanted to just let everybody know for the next few days, I am talking about child physical abuse, the effects that it has on children, right? And it's from an article called How Does Physical Abuse Impact a Child from healthyplace.com, www.healthyplace.com. And this particular article, I've read this before many times and gone over the material on Healthy Place about abuse, and it's a good website for all kinds of information, but they have tons and tons of info on abuse and child abuse, domestic violence and whatnot, and the aftermath and adult survivor issues and different things that can happen to people because of abuse and whatnot. or due to the abuse that they suffered, right? So that's what we're going to talk about this weekend. It's pretty graphic, so you have to know that you have to listen at your own discretion, because I'm talking about my own story, and bringing to light, you know, how I felt and what I was going through, right? So it's very graphic, and I would hope that everybody just listens at their own discretion. If it makes you uncomfortable, just turn the show off, right? It's ultimately your decision. So we'll get right into this, and I'm just bringing up all the links again. Sorry about that. I had to go completely out and reboot and come back in, and it took forever. So we're just getting there now. And I had quite a few people in the chat room, and I'm sorry if I lost you there, because when I had to reboot, I lost the chat room as well. So I thank everybody who's still here and who's tuning in and waiting. Thanks very much for being here. I appreciate it. And hopefully you can hear me, and I'm streaming through properly now. And we'll just get right into this here. So I left off yesterday talking about some of the beatings that my mother had, dished out to me when I was a child, and just how serious it really was, and the fact that by the time I was 10, I was kind of wishing that I was dead. I even used to tell my mom, why don't you just go ahead and kill me? Because she was always threatening to kill me anyway. And her attitude was, I should have killed you years ago. That's what she used to tell me. Or I should have let you die when you were a baby. That's the sort of thing she would say. And as she was beating on me, she would throw that in there just to make me feel even worse. You know what I mean? And so, by the time I was 10, I really felt that I was dead. And there was a particular beating that I talked about yesterday that where, she almost broke my nose and split my lip and rearranged my face. And how harsh that was on my psyche, on my whole very being, right? I really felt that I was dead, and I went out in the living room to tell her, that she should just go ahead and kill me, you know what I mean? Absolutely horrific. No child should ever have to go through that, right? So, it's the psychological damage done from abuse is absolutely horrific, and most people who are survivors that I talk to all, relate and agree that, the physical abuse is, it's the psychological damage, it's the emotional damage that's done, that actually really, really hurts, because it stays, it's an issue of what's going on in your heart. And I knew, because how could a mother who loves their child treat their child like that? You know what I mean? I knew where I stood with my mom, right? She would tell me, to my face that she hated me, that she never wanted me in the first place, right? I was born out of marital rape, and so she made sure that I knew that at a very young age, and maintained that all the way through my childhood, right? Even up into my teen years, right? And the physical abuse didn't stop until I was 17, and finally the last time that she ever attempted to hit me was at work. We were both working together. I got a job where she was working because my sister and my mother figured that I should have a job and I should be doing something with myself other than doing drugs and partying. And so, I took them up on it and worked with my mom. So we were working together, and at work she was even attempting to hit me, to backhand me, to grab me and push me around, right? So these people at work actually stepped in and intervened and told her, look, she's too old for that, and you shouldn't be treating her like that anyway. And so, it's ridiculous that a parent would think that they should have to use that kind of violence and that kind of control over their children, all because they don't like something they've said or a look that they have on their face, I mean, really, by the time I was 17, of course I didn't have a very good look on my face, you know what I mean, maybe compared to what most normal teens, might be experiencing in their home. They might still have a bit of an attitude, you know what I mean, because teens can kind of sometimes, develop these attitudes where they'll push the limits, It's pretty, and it's because they're testing the grounds, they're testing the water, right? And so, but when a child is abused all the way through their life, they are going to be affected by that. And so, I mean, I really couldn't help the look that I had on my face, because it was pure disdain and pure disgust for what my mother had been doing to me my whole life. And so, I used to try to keep a straight face when I was around her, just so I wouldn't catch a beating. But sometimes, certain things she would say to me would just cut me to the core. And I guess I'd have a look on my face, and then she would have an excuse to beat me, whether I even had a look on my face or not. So that was one of her favorite things to do, was if I had a look on my face, then she could say, take that look off your face right now. And then if I, complained about it and said, what look? Then she'd beat me, right? So that's the whole issue. She had an excuse every day to beat me just coming in the room. Like all I had to do was go in the room. So that's a huge issue for people who have been abused. There was never any real reason for my mom to beat me like she did. It's not like I was a bad kid, She made it out to be that I was this horrible kid. I was a bad child, a horrible kid. I was just a kid who's trying to survive in an abusive home. And so, but I was actually a really good kid. I mean, I used to, like I was saying yesterday, just before the show ended, I was saying that I used to go and get flowers for her from the neighbors' yards and bring them home and give them to her. And I really loved my mom, and I hated to see what was going on in the home. I hated to see what my dad was doing to my mom. Hated to see what was happening between them and my parents and my siblings and myself. And I loved my mom very much, right? And so when I was young, really small, I would say around 6, 7, 8 years old, I used to go and get flowers for her and give them to her in little cards, saying "I love you, Mom" and stuff like this. But that all stopped after a while, because after you're treated a certain way for so many years, my heart started to go a little bit jaded, kind of calloused, and I really didn't attempt to do things like that anymore, because she was just beating on me and didn't, me trying to show her my love towards her was not working. It wasn't helping the situation. So I thought, finally after a while as a young child, I thought, well, she doesn't care, that I love her. Why do I love her? She's hurting me, you know what I mean? So I just cut off that kind of stuff and really just tried to avoid her, you know what I mean, all the way through my teen years, because she was so extremely violent and she was manic depressive, which is today now kind of called, I guess, or known as bipolar. She was not on medication. My dad was borderline schizophrenic, so there was huge issues in the home, and I knew where I stood with her, right? And it's absolutely horrific what people do to their children. So healthyplace.com, this particular article that we were going through yesterday, how does physical abuse impact a child, from www.healthyplace.com, and I'm going to pop this link into the chat room. And it's not just the physical abuse. It's what happens because of the physical abuse. It's the psychological abuse, the emotional abuse done. Like laying on the ground, being beaten like that. Even today, I have issues of getting down on the ground. Like when I get down, if I have to pick something up off the floor and it goes underneath the table, and I can't reach it, and I have to actually get down on my knees and pick it and dig under the table for something that's rolled under the table. Let's just say, for an example, I have a real problem with that because I have flashbacks. So when I'm on the ground, I remember being beaten and being kicked and beaten by my mother and my dad. So for me to be on the ground is a huge, huge issue. I really don't like to be down in that position, on my hands and knees, because that's where I was quite a bit when I was being beaten, right? And there was one episode where when I was 13 and a half, where my mother beat me because I didn't want to eat this particular lunch that she prepared for me. And she called me for lunch. She says, "Hey, I've got lunch here." So I came into the kitchen, sat down, and it was a bowl of this soup that was a cold stewed tomato soup that had milk in it that was curdled. And I didn't want to eat that. I just looked at it and I thought, oh God, I don't want to eat that. I hated that stewed tomato soup that my mom would make, right? And I think she knew that, and I think that's why she did that. I seriously think she set that beating up, right? Because she got angry because I said something about not wanting to eat that soup for lunch, right? So she pounded the table, she stood up, and she backhanded me, and she hit me so hard that my hand flew back into the dryer, and my temple caught the dryer as I went backwards, right, from this backhand, because my mom weighed over 200 pounds, and I was just a kid, so I probably didn't even weigh 100 pounds, and she weighed 260 pounds or 280 pounds or something like that. And she was pretty heavy, big woman, 5'10", absolutely huge woman. So when she hit you, you knew it, right? I mean, it wasn't like a little smack on the face or something. I mean, she was like a boxer. She would bash you. She was really strong, and that's why my dad really she to defend herself, she she would retaliate against my dad. So if my dad had been abusive to her, within a few days, if he wasn't watching, she would catch him with frying pans or lamps or dishes or whatever, and she would retaliate. She was able to take care of herself. Let me tell you that. So anyway, there's about a minute left here, and I'm going to continue to chat. So anybody who's listening live, which I thank you all very much for being here, and sorry about the mess up with Blog Talk Radio here, and the chat room and all that. So I will continue to talk. So if you do want to catch this show, I'll be on here for another little while discussing some more of this. And then tomorrow morning, back at the same time, and I hope I have a better time getting into the show tomorrow morning, right? I'll be on tonight too as well. Dreamcatchers Talk Radio as well at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on Blog Talk Radio, and then my show after that. So, I appreciate everybody for being here. Thank you very much. And if you're a survivor, you make sure that you stay alive, right? You do what you can to get yourself some help, right? And never give up. Never, ever give up. I wish I could have reached my brothers. That's what I was saying yesterday. But I couldn't reach my brothers, and no one could. They gave up. Don't ever give up, right? And thank you so much for being here. And I got my good friend Gypsy Witch here with me. Thanks, Gypsy Witch, and I'll talk to you later. I'll catch you later. And I hope you have a great night. She's down in Australia. So I'm just waking up, and she's just going to bed. So thank you so much for being here, and thanks everybody for tuning in. I had a lot of guests here today, and I'm sorry about the mix-up here with getting into the show. So we're going to continue talking. So this beating that I took, it was absolutely horrific, and my mother, I was trying to escape and get out of the kitchen. I detailed this in my book, Life of Death, The Redemption, but I knew this was going to be bad. I sort of started to bolt around the table, right? Well, she pushed the table against my side and shoved me into the wall just behind me, so I couldn't get out of the kitchen, right? I was trapped, and she grabbed a rolling pin and then pulled the table away, basically just throwing it to the other side of the kitchen, which was a very small kitchen. So she shoved it the other way, came running at me, and of course, to protect myself, I knew I was going to be beaten, so I was like, oh shit, so I was already down on the ground with my waiting for this, with my arms protecting my head, right? Because I could see her coming with the rolling pin, and this was a huge homemade heavy-duty rolling pin that her father had made for her, and it was kind of a 1.5 times size a regular rolling pin would be, and it was made out of hardwood. And I thought, oh Jesus, I'm gonna get it now. So she beat me with this thing and cracked my head open, and blood was pouring, and of course I was pleading with her to stop, and down on the ground on my hands and knees, and this thing was coming down on my shoulders, and she was just raging mad, right? Just raging, and so it was absolutely horrific what that does to you, right? I just the damage done from that, just not only the physical damage, because I still have pain in my back from the beatings that she dished out, but it's mainly what's going on in my heart, what's going on in my mind, And so for me to be down on my hands, cleaning or looking for something underneath of something is a real issue, because it puts me down in that vulnerable spot where I was as a child so often. And I think, people so many people like to minimize abuse and think abuse is discipline. But a parent is bashing their child's head in with a rolling pin just because they didn't want to eat a particular kind of soup, and causing their head to crack, and then beating their back and their shoulders and their neck and their head over and over again with this rolling pin. And finally she actually got tired of it. She actually was kicking me and kicked my legs, and then finally got a little bit tired and winded and stopped and threw the rolling pin across the room into the sink area where the cabinet where the sink was, and busted a whole bunch of dishes. And then I thought, okay, here's my chance to get out, right? So I stood up, started going through the living room, and was dizzy, disoriented, and in a lot of pain, shaking, really freaked out by this beating, and really upset, right? And she spun me around in the living room and spit in my face, and called me a bunch of names, whore and slut, and screaming at me, right, just screaming at me, and threw me out of the house and slammed the door behind me. So I was just kind of wandering down the street thinking, where am I going to go? I left the yard, went walking down the street, and I thought, oh, Jesus, if I could pass out, nobody would even know. So I decided to stay on the street just in case, and went down a couple houses to see if one of my friends was home. So absolutely horrific what that does to children, And of course, what I was supposed to love my mom after that. I was supposed to respect her and be good to her, which I was. That's the whole issue. I mean, she was, people would say, well, how could you love your mom, and how could you, I detail a lot of the abuse, but I don't detail all of it because the book, the book would have been 5 million pages long. You know what I mean? I picked out some of the main, really destructive and destroying, situations that my parents had put us in, and went with that. You know what I mean? Because it was the stuff that really impacted me. That I wanted people to know about in the book. So, that's, people would say, well, how could you love your parents after they did that to you? And how, I've heard other people, especially survivors, say this, right? Well, I loved my mom, you know what I mean? She never could show me love back. But some, you know what I mean, as a small child and growing up, loved my mom, right? But I was learning how to hate her, you know what I mean? Part of me, I guess, wanted to hate my parents for what they did, so I used to think that I hated them, right? And I'd even tell my dad to his face, I hate you, I hate your guts, and I'd be cussing, really. I wouldn't just be saying I hate your guts, I hate your effing guts, and to his face, right? Because I knew that I was going to be beaten anyway, right? So I didn't care. I thought, I'm going to get my say out. I'm going to be beaten anyway, so I'm going to say what I'm going to say. And of course, it would get me in a little bit more trouble, right? Because the beating would be a little more severe because I opened my mouth. Whereas my sister, who was 5 years older, she, I guess, knew how to play the game because she was involved in some of the worst abuse going, because she witnessed the major abuse that my brothers were being put through that actually was the reason why CPS got involved, because my parents were busted for child abuse. They were brought up on charges. They were arrested when I was a toddler, 2 years old. So my sister would have been 7 years old at that point. She had witnessed some of the most worst abuse in the home, and she went within herself. I think she couldn't. It was too distressing. It was too stressful for her. So she went very quiet and like a little mouse, would sit around and not make any noise. Really stayed out of the picture in the home. As a matter of fact, nobody ever really knew where she was. So the whole time I was growing up, I never really knew where she was, because she was either never home or she was hiding in the home, right? So she was not in the way. She was not visible. She made herself very much invisible. Whereas I was out there speaking out against the abuse, right? I didn't like what my dad was doing to my brothers. My dad would, especially my brother Rob, because my dad just had it in for my brother Rob, and my dad would come and, call my brother names and start hitting him and kicking him or grabbing his belt and beating on my brother. I didn't want to see that, so I would be like, because I loved my brother, and I'd be like, stop hurting my brother, right? I'd tell my dad. I was like 5, 6 years old, and my dad would then, of course, hurt me, backhand me or beat me with the belt because I was trying to stick up for my brother. Whereas my sister sat in the background, and whether she was in the room or not, she never made a noise, because I think she was afraid of being beaten. I think she was afraid of the backlash that would occur because of that, right? Because she opened up her mouth. Because my mom's favorite thing was, if I opened up my mouth, it gave her a real good reason to beat on me, right? And depending on how I felt about this situation, I would keep quiet sometimes, if I really felt that I couldn't take a beating, or just wasn't up for it, I would just sit there and shut up and I wouldn't say anything. But, if I was feeling like, oh no, go ahead and bring it on, what are you going to do, kill me? Go ahead, then I would say something, you know what I mean, depending on how I was feeling, pretty much. And it's just absolutely ridiculous that two people would have that kind of control, that kind of manipulative control, because that's what abuse is all about, right? And over their children, that they would hurt their children. I could never figure out why our parents would never call us in the room and say, hey, I love you, you're all our beautiful children. We love you guys so much. What are we going to do today as a family? No, because my parents' biggest problem was that they hated each other. And they were trying to make each other's lives so miserable that the kids just didn't count, right? And this is the truth and the reality of it, right? The kids did not count. We were worthless to both of them. Now, my dad is almost 90, and he's schizophrenic, and he's still alive. My mom passed away years ago, but You know, my dad today, he's schizophrenic, and he maintains that he just loves his children, and he loved his wife, and he loves his children, and I remember back to the stuff that he put us through, and the stuff that he did to me personally, the stuff that he did to my mom, the horrible treatment that he treated my brothers, you know, and I think, and you loved us? No, he lives in some sort of he lives in his own reality because he's schizophrenic, and yet there are family members and there are people who knew our family, friends of the family, because my parents were very manipulative. They had lots of friends. They had lots of support. They could beat their children, and then, you know, these people would still be okay with it because they would witness it, and they'd be like, oh, they just deserve that, you know, as your parents pummeling you and kicking you and throwing you against the walls, you know, and that was okay because everybody liked my parents, right? So, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that these people would, the issue is that they don't know and they don't understand what it was to live with my parents. You know what I mean? They knew my parents were brought up on charges. They knew what my parents had done to all of us. And yet they would back my parents and they would say, we just loved your parents. Your mom was such a great woman and she made cookies. She baked cookies all the time. It's like, who cares about the flippin' cookies? You know, I don't care about the cookies. What I care about is what she did to me. You know what I mean? My mother, like, she killed me. She didn't put me in a body bag, but she literally killed my spirit. She killed my soul. She killed my whole being and screwed me for life. You know what I mean? Because of the fact that I missed out on my childhood, right? My dad, same thing. Oh, your dad, he's such a good man, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, right. Is that your definition of a good man? Somebody who would rape his wife, rape his sons? You know what I mean? Someone who would beat on me and hit me in the face with a belt buckle and beat me, you know, and threaten to kill me because I'm the devil, right? That's a good man. Is that somebody's definition of a good man? And then there's people that, oh, your mother was such a good woman. Yeah, that's your definition of a good woman. Somebody who would burn their child, burn me. Somebody who would beat their child senseless, and really kill them. Someone who would make their child sleep in their own throw up. Is that a good mother? You know, like someone who would call their children names, every time they got an opportunity. Horrible names, you know. Throw things at them, throw them around the room, you know. Like, is that a good parent? No, it's not a good parent. So for everybody out there, you know, the people that know our family from before, they knew about this stuff. They knew my parents were dysfunctional, but they just loved my parents. That's how manipulators are. That's how abusers are, you know. And these people would fall for that and not realize what they did to their family was so incredibly wrong. And see, that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm speaking out against abuse, because so many times abusers walk free. Even though my parents were brought up on charges, the courts were threatening to remove us from the home, and my mom pleaded and begged to have us children stay in the home because she loved her children, quote unquote. I love my children. This is what my mom told me. My mom would tell me this stuff. See, my mom would talk to me quite a bit. She didn't have my dad to talk to, so she used me in place of my dad. Now, she did not sexually use me in place of my dad, but she used me in every other way because she was not getting along with my dad ever after I was born, right? Actually, before I was born. So my parents never sat and talked. They never had a normal conversation. They never said, oh, I love you, honey. What's for breakfast? No, none of that, right? There was no normalcy in my home. I didn't grow up with any normal affection. There was no affection, period. And the only real affection that we ever got was a beating, a good sound kicking, you know what I mean, a good sound ass kicking. It's absolutely horrific. And yet there would be people that would sit back and, oh, I just loved your parents. I hate when people say that to me. I'm like, you didn't have to live with them. Good for you, you know. And so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and that's exactly why I'm going public, and that's why I went public, because I want people to know that abusers walk free many, many times, and what they do to their children is absolutely horrific, and it should never ever happen. And you know, it's just absolute horror for these children. You know, I mean, I can't even describe to you the sounds that I was making when my mother was beating on me with that rolling pin. I mean, I couldn't. It sounded like a virile. It was like a sound a dog would make when it was being beaten. You know what I mean? Sound of like a dog who's being kicked and thrown around the room. That's the noises I was making. You know, and whimpering and pleading with my mother, begging her to stop. Right? And then she was like, "Do you want some more?" Screaming in my ear, you know. And I was like, "No, I don't." You know what I mean? Like trying to get her to stop, right? All because I didn't want to eat a particular soup that day. Really, my mom should have said, "Well, you know, I know you don't like this soup, and you know, we shouldn't waste food. But I guess, you know, if you don't want this, maybe, you know, you want a sandwich or something." Instead of that, she beat me to a pulp. She could have killed me, right? But see, I didn't care if I died, right? Because I was like, well, if I die, I die, right? That part of me actually didn't care. The other part of me, of course, did, because I'm still here. But part of me was wishing for death because I was in so much pain and misery, you know. And it's absolutely horrific what people do, you know. No child should ever have to go through that, ever. So yeah, if you've been through this, you know, you make sure you get some help and do, you know, whatever kind of help is good for you. Everybody's different. Some people, you know, might like to go to a counselor. Some people might like to go to a therapist instead of, you know, group support or online group support. And some people might prefer to do the group support way, you know, of beginning your healing journey, right? But whatever you do, you know, don't give up on yourself. You know, I sat there, you know, 4 years ago ready to self-injure. I really wanted to self-injure. I wanted to hurt myself. I wanted to dig into my skin is what I wanted to do. And I wanted to rip myself to shreds, right? Because that's how much pain I was. My heart was ripped to shreds my whole life. And I thought, man, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I want to show the world. Just ripped to shreds. That's how I feel. And, you know, then I was thinking about, you know, planning my suicides again, right? This was 4 years ago. And I was sitting on the couch and I thought, who's going to even care? You know? Like, nobody will care. Nobody cares that I was abused. Nobody cares. There's nobody around me in my immediate family or that even knows me that really cares what happened to me as a child. No? Because I was an easy-to-hate child, right? Because I was made to be a bully. My mom made me a bully, right? My mom showed me how to hurt people. So as a young person, I mean, I wasn't the greatest kid. It was easy for people to not like me and think I was a bad kid and think I was a horrible kid, right? And so, you know, I don't have any real support from anybody, you know what I mean, in my own immediate family and my own circle. I have a lot of friends who have become my family, which is great. But the thing is like, I was ready to self-injure. I thought, who's going to care? My parents, my mom wouldn't, she's passed away, and even if she was alive, she wouldn't care. My dad wouldn't care, you know, that if I killed myself. He didn't care that his son killed himself. He didn't care that his other son died of a drug overdose because of what he did to them. Because I do believe that my dad sexually sodomized my brothers. I really do. I think I saw some things. I saw some things that would twist your mind, that would freak you out, let me tell you that. And I don't have any proof, but I tell you what, I wish that they were here, and I wish that they would have disclosed the abuse, and I wish that they would have gotten some help and stayed here with us, you know. But it's very, very sad, right? You know, we certainly didn't deserve that. Neither did my brothers, right? And so that's why, you know, it's so important, right, to get help and not suffer in this alone. I kind of got sidetracked there. But there's people that just didn't care, you know. And so I thought, nobody's going to care if I kill myself, you know what I mean? So why am I doing this? And I really started to question myself. I started to question what I was doing. And I said, wait a minute, if I self-injure, all it's going to do is hurt me more, and I've been hurt enough. And I started to get mad. And I was on the couch by myself, sitting there, right? And I was having a really bad night, right? It was a harsh night. And it was, you know, when you're thinking about killing yourself, it's a pretty harsh night. And I thought, and then I thought, I need to fight this thing, because if I do this, my parents are going to win. That's what popped into my head. I thought, oh my God, my parents will win this fight if I do this, because they already won with my brothers, you know. And I thought, man, no, I need to win this fight. So what do I need to do? I need to stay alive. I need to have a good life. I need to learn how to love myself, care about myself, take care of myself, you know. And I'm going to win this fight, right? So that's what got me motivated, really, to go on my healing journey, and that was 4 years ago. So I've come a long way, right? But you know, for people, and I trusted groups more than one-on-one. I don't do well with one-on-one anything. So group support to me seemed like the best way to go. So I got involved with an online group support, which was great. So there is stuff out there for people. So make sure that you do reach out, and you do, you know, find something that works for you, right? And stay here with us, and and be well, right? We did not deserve that. No one deserves, no child deserves to start out their life like that and then have to deal with the aftermath, right? But since we can't change the past, the only thing that we can change is now, the here and now, right? How do I feel about it now? How am I going to handle things now? Can't change the past, right? And so I started to realize, oh man, I have let my parents win, really up until the age of 41. And I thought, no more, absolutely no more. So, I thought, no, I'm sticking around. I'm going to have a good life, and I'm going to learn to heal and learn how to deal with this stuff, and I'm going to move forward, and as long as it takes, because I'm going to come out the winner in this, right? It's a slap in my parents' face that I did not kill myself, or that I'm not laying in the street, in the gutter somewhere, in the back alley somewhere, or hooking for drugs and stuff, right? It's a total slap in my parents' face, because they did want us dead. They wanted us dead and gone. They hated us. Both of our parents, both of my parents would tell all of me and all of their children that they hated our guts and they wish we were dead, and that we never should have been born, and that they should have killed us. Both of our parents told us this. Now, if that's a good parent, that's a good parent. Boy, don't you just love that? You know what I mean? I find it so funny that people were so snowed and blinded by my parents, right? And so, the shame really lies on the people who would not want to see the truth. That's where the shame lies. And the shame lies on the abusers. So the shame does not belong to me. And when I realized that I could go public with my story, because the shame does not belong to me. It belongs to my parents, the abusers, and my brother who sexually abused me. So that's where the shame lies, with the abusers, not with me. That shame, my parents put a necklace on me and my brother, a necklace of shame and rage and filthiness and dirtiness and pain and anguish and suffering. And they put this necklace around my neck and expected me to wear it the rest of my life. But I took it off 4 years ago and I threw it away. I just said, it does not belong to me. That does not belong to me. You know what I mean? No. I certainly didn't deserve that. So I threw that necklace away. That's what I considered it to be, this heavy, heavy necklace that was hanging around my neck that was killing me day after day after day. And I took that necklace off, just symbolizing it as a necklace, and I threw it away. I said, that is not mine. It's just garbage. And so, in doing so, I allowed myself, really broke the chains and broke the binds, the bondage, of being kept in silence, of being made to be silent about the abuse, and being made to suffer alone in silence, right? Because that's the whole sad part of abuse, is that so many people do suffer in silence and never get any help. And my two brothers were that way, and they killed themselves. So you make sure you do what you have to do to stay alive, and you be well and stay here with us, and win this fight, right? That's what I say. That's what I'm going to say every day. Never give up, right? Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.